The Homestead Acts of 1862, 1904 and 1909 allowed US farmers to claim a homestead and start farming in the Great Plains. This resulted in an influx of new and inexperienced farmers into the Great Plains. Farmers had a belief that rain follows the plow. So they started to plow the brown prairies, turning them into golden fields of wheat and corn. They were quite successful early on due to favorable environmental conditions and the rising demands of wheat between 1910 and 1920 due to World War I. They started to plow more and more land. So they realized the highest yields of wheat in 1929. But in 1930, a severe drought hit the Midwest and southern Great Plains. This was followed by massive dust storms in 1931. The bare soil that was once covered with different grasses was more prone to wind erosion, the so-called Dust Bowl or Dirty 30s. The Dust Bowl years continued till 1939 when a wet season brought the Dust Bowl years to a close. But the impacts of Dust Bowl years lasted till 1950s. During the Dust Bowl years, the dust would cover the sky for days, choking houses and fields. The topsoil was blown as far as New York and Washington. The ships standing in the Atlantic Ocean were coated with dust. The people were suffering from the so-called dust pneumonia or dust allergy. This also resulted into loss of the lives of people and livestock, and about 2.5 million people had to migrate. So such was the impact of improper tillage practices coupled with the environmental disaster. Before seeding, the land is usually prepared in some fashion to incorporate the previous crop's residues, destroy weeds, and to loosen the soil for a proper seed bed. All these operations are described technically by the term tillage. The term tillage is derived from the Anglo-Saxon words tillion or teolion, which means to plow the soil, to disturb the soil, or to loosen the soil. An English agriculturist, Jethro Tull, is called as the father of tillage. Jethro Tull believed that plants absorb fine particles of soil. So it is necessary to prepare the soil or to plow the soil thoroughly to turn it into fine particles so that plants can absorb those particles. Technically, tillage is defined as the manual or mechanized manipulation of the soil with tools and implements so as to provide an ideal seed bed for proper crop growth and development. So tillage includes all those physical operations which are necessary for proper crop growth and development. The main objectives of tillage are to incorporate previous crop residues, to destroy weeds, to level the soil for efficient soil and water management, to prepare a root bed, to prepare a seed bed, to improve aeration of the soil, to improve infiltration, control runoff, to spread or incorporate fertilizers and pesticides into soil, to break the hard pan, and for reclamation of problematic soils. The overall objective of tillage is to prepare an ideal or fine tilth. Tilth is the physical condition of soil resulting from tillage operation. Depth of the plowing for shallow rooted crops is about 10 to 20 centimeter, while for deep rooted crops the depth of plowing is 15 to 30 centimeter. The number of plowings depend on a number of factors. For example, the crop to be grown, soil type, source and availability of water, and availability of tools or implements for tillage. The time of plowing is usually 60% of the upper drain limit, that is the moisture content in the root zone after the excess water following a heavy irrigation or rainfall has drained out of the root zone. So 60% of the upper drain limit or field capacity is good time usually for starting a tillage operation. A tillage system describes the nature and sequence of tillage operations used in preparing a field. So there are two approaches or two main tillage system. One approach is conventional tillage system and the other is conservation tillage system. In conventional system of tillage, 15% or less crop residues are maintained on the soil surface, whereas in conservation tillage system 30% or more crop residues are left on the soil surface. The conventional tillage system has two basic methods. Clean till, in which no crop residues or debris is left on the soil surface, and mulch tillage, in which some crop residues or debris is left on the soil surface. The conventional tillage is further categorized into two types: preparatory tillage and intertillage. The main objective of primary tillage is to prepare a root bed. So it is usually the initial major plowing operation after the harvest of previous crops. The soil is plowed to a depth of 6 to 14 inches and inverted. The root bed is prepared by loosening of the soil, burial of weeds, stubbles and remains of the previous crops. And primary tillage implements which are commonly used include country plow, moldboard plow, disc plow, chisel plow, subsoiler and rotavator. The secondary tillage aims at preparing the seed bed. Secondary tillage refers to field operations after primary tillage to prepare the seed bed for planting. The soil is prepared to a depth of 2 to 5 inches. And in this case, the soil is not inverted but instead stirred and conditioned by breaking the clods and crusts, uprooting and removing weeds, stubbles, and the common secondary tillage implements include planker, disc harrow, cultivator, seeding, drills, zero tillage drill, and roller. Intertillage refers to tillage operations after seeding and before harvesting of the crop. Hoeing is the removal of weeds by hand tools. Harrowing is the use of harrow for weed control. Earthing up is the practice of covering the plants with soil in order to facilitate their firm establishment in the field. And sometimes after seeding, ridges and furrows are made by a ridger. So practices like hoeing and harrowing also improve aeration of the soil. The conventional method leaves minimum crop residues on the soil surface, so it is easier to perform different cultural operations in the field. For example, seeding, weeding, application of fertilizers and pesticides. Still, one of the most effective methods to manage different crop pests like weeds, insect pests and diseases or pathogens, because it prevents the overwintering or oversummering of pests, and it is an effective method to control weeds uh, by repeated plowing. If we talk about the disadvantages of conventional tillage, it is a costly operation. So, disking, plowing, rotavating, all of these are costly operation in terms of energy consumption. Tillage also results in the formation of plow pans and increases the risk of erosion, particularly in dryland systems. And tillage may result in the loss of organic matter over time. Overall, the tillage has detrimental effects on the soil structure or soil aggregation. So, for these reasons, there is a renewed focus on the conservation tillage approaches. The conservation tillage is a modern concept in which 30% or more crop residues are left on the soil surface. The main purpose is to control erosion and conserve soil moisture. Different types of conservation tillage include zero tillage, reduced tillage, stubble mulch tillage, strip tillage, and ridge tillage. Zero tillage is a practice in which soil disturbance is limited only to the spot where the seed would be placed. For example, sowing of wheat after rice using a zero tillage seed drill. Reduced tillage is a loosely defined term. It involves considerable soil disturbance, though to a lesser extent than conventional tillage. The objective of stubble mulch tillage is to leave crop residues to serve as mulch. It can control erosion and weeds, especially during fallow periods. Strip tillage is also called as zone tillage or zone till. It is the disturbance of narrow strips in the soil where seeding is to be done. Whereas the inter-row zone remains undisturbed and covered with crop residues. Strip tillage is especially useful in poorly drained soils and for management of phosphatic and potassic fertilizers. Ridge tillage is also called as ridge plant, which involves tilling a small band of soil on the ridges. The soil from top of the ridges is mixed with crop residues between ridges, and the soil is only disturbed for fertilization. This system is particularly recommended for growing vegetables. The conservation tillage is a modern concept. The disadvantages of conventional tillage are advantages of conservation tillage. For example, conservation tillage reduces soil erosion, conserves soil moisture and organic matter, avoids soil compaction. It is applicable to steep slopes, and it reduces the energy consumption and thus the cost of production, and it can moderate soil temperatures as well. If we talk about the disadvantages of conservation tillage, these are dependence on herbicides or chemicals for controlling weeds, the need for special equipment, difficulty in farm operations, and higher risk of herbicide resistance. A comparison of conventional and conservation tillage approaches shows that for preparing a seedbed and planting a crop, conventional tillage approaches use plowing with moldboard plow, disking, cultivating, and planting. Whereas reduced tillage approach uses disking, cultivating, and planting. In contrast, no-till approaches have a minimum disturbance of the soil, specialized planting equipment, and only herbicides for weed control. Tillage practices in dryland systems must aim three things. Number one, to increase the amount of water storage in the root zone during the non-crop period. Number two, to create a seed bed so that seeding and crop establishment match with the availability of moisture and utilize the available or stored soil moisture efficiently. And number three, to conserve the soil, that is the resource base. In order to achieve these objectives, in different parts of the world, different practices are followed. These practices depend on the land use systems, the socioeconomic characteristics of farmers, and the climatic factors. If we talk about the dryland systems or Barani tract of Pakistan, the predominant farming system in these Barani areas is crops livestock system. The crops which are mainly grown in this Barani tract include wheat, gram, lentil, cowpea, maize, pearl millet, sorghum, and guar. There are two types of lands that are usually distinguished: Mera and Lepara. Mera type land is away from village where little or no farmyard manure is applied, whereas the Lepara land is close to the village and regularly farmyard manure is applied to those lands. Tillage practices in our typical Barani tract are already reduced due to various factors. Due to small size of land holdings, the unavailability of large tillage implements, and energy consumption, and the types of crop that are grown. They also have less tillage requirement than some of the crops which require heavy tillage operations like sugarcane or cotton. Traditionally, the Barani tract farmers relied on bullocks for animal-drawn wooden plow. But with the introduction of modern tillage implements, the field cultivator has replaced the bullock-drawn country plow or wooden plow in most parts. But still, due to the unaffordability of farmers, most of the Barani area farmers rely on the hired tractors and cultivators. So following a rainfall period, for example monsoon, almost whole village hires a tractor, and the challenge for the driver is to complete the tillage operations within 2 or 3 days over the whole cultivated area of the village, so as to conserve soil moisture and ensure timely seeding of the next crop. And sometimes I've seen that bringing that cultivator over slopy lands after crossing the village is also a challenging task, and which requires special operations. So some of the common practices that are being practiced in our dryland systems are deep tillage, shallow tillage, land leveling, bunding, contour farming, and subsoiling. The land preparation in dryland system usually starts with off-season tillage operations during the fallow period. The off-season tillage operations include destoning or removal of stones from the field, leveling of the field along the contour lines with the help of a front blade, and bunding. The bunds are made along the contour lines. Contours are the lines of uniform elevation on a slopy land. These bunds can be made with soil and can be consolidated with stones or grasses. Occasionally, every 3 to 5 years, in order to break the hard pan, subsoiling practice is also a common practice. Subsoiling with the subsoiler or a chisel plow is done to break the hard pan. Subsoiling ensures the shattering of soil surface and avoiding soil compaction, but also maintains the crop residues on the soil surface. So land leveling, destoning, making of bunds, and subsoiling are followed by deep tillage operations with the help of a moldboard plow. A wooden moldboard plow can plow the soil to about 15 centimeter, while a tractor drawn moldboard plow can disturb the soil to 25 and 30 centimeter depth. Deep tillage is done prior to the arrival of monsoons so as to maximize the infiltration, and soon after the monsoon rains, a shallow cultivation is done with wooden plow or normal field cultivator to break the capillary flow of water to the soil. This practice ensures moisture conservation by reducing the losses of water in the form of evaporation. Land leveling, destoning, bunding, subsoiling, shallow tillage and deep tillage ensure maximum infiltration of water into the soil, reduce erosion by reducing runoff, and to provide ideal conditions for seeding of the next crop. The moldboard plow leaves no space unplowed as furrow slices are cut clean and inverted to one side, resulting in better pulverization. However, the clod formation may take place, for which harrowing is necessary to complete the tillage operation. Chisel plow is a large field cultivator that breaks hard pan, but also used for deep plowing with less disturbance to top layers. Use of chisel plow avoids soil compaction and allows the free movement of roots, water, and air. Moldboard plowing is a conventional tillage approach which incorporates most of the crop residues, whereas chisel plowing is a conservation tillage approach which leaves more residues on the soil surface. Tillage operations for seedbed preparation are completed by cultivation with a field cultivator or wooden plow, sometimes disking with a disc plow, and planking with a planker. The intertillage operation or intercultivation is also done in some crops to improve aeration as well as weed control. But generally, the weed prevalence, weed diversity, and weed density is less as compared to the irrigated systems, because weeds have less resources to proliferate, for example soil, moisture and nutrients, and Mostly the weed competitive crops are grown in rain-fed areas, for example, sorghum or pearl millet. Weeds are also used as fodder and for grazing by livestock. So, weed control is less of a problem as compared to the irrigated system. However, this doesn't mean that weeds do not compete with crops in rain-fed areas. Some of the weeds are very difficult to control. For example, wild onion in chickpea-based system, and a more recent threat is the proliferation of Parthenium weed in unattended places. Modern concept in irrigated as well as dryland tillage system is the use of stubble mulch, that is leaving crop residues on the soil surface to control erosion, control weeds, uh, and moderate soil temperatures. So let us now weigh the benefits and limitations of stubble mulching. The idea of using stubble mulch was designed to control wind erosion after the dust bowl phenomena, because the absence of crop residues results in soil deterioration and loss of soil fertility. Mulching with crop residues is the most common types of mulch, and the advantages of mulch tillage are improved infiltration, reduced evaporation, and reduced runoff. The erosion is reduced due to minimizing of raindrop energy, soil crusting, and runoff. There is also less pollution problem because of less dust in the air and cleaner water due to less sedimentation of waterways. Stubble mulch is more effective in low rainfall areas compared to the high rainfall areas in which excess moisture has its own ill effects. Mulching with low density residues like wheat straw are more effective in reducing evaporation than high density residues like sorghum, probably due to more reflectance from wheat straw. Other advantages of stubble mulch are improved nutritional status, or the buildup of organic matter content, improved moisture content due to more infiltration and reduced evaporation, and reduced salinity due to less evaporation and less compaction. Stubble mulch also helps in moderation of soil temperature by affecting radiation balance, and due to more water content in the soil there is slower gaseous exchange and less variation in diurnal temperatures. These reasons stubble mulch is getting increasing attention in conservation tillage approaches. Stubble mulch also has some limitations. For example, reduced soil temperature in cooler regions results in extension of growth duration and late sowing of subsequent crop. The conventional tillage has a clean till approach, but the mulch tillage creates sanitary problems and spread of different pests by harboring them or by providing them food and shelter. Weed control is difficult in stubble mulching, and we have to rely on chemical control methods. Phytotoxic substances such as aliphatic acids result in less growth of subsequent crops such as wheat. So for this purpose, the contact between seedling and stubbles must be reduced. The nitrogen may be immobilized because of high CN ratio that can depress the nitrification. This is evident from low nitrogen availability, low grain protein content, and low biomass in dryland systems. The low nitrification is due to low temperature or less aeration or nitrogen fixation by crop residues which decompose more slowly on soil surface than incorporated residues. So one of the solutions is to apply starter dose of nitrogen to narrow the CN ratio. Stubble mulch also interferes with cultural operations such as for seedbed preparation, sowing, or weed control. Overall picture is that tillage and residue management can increase crop yields by moisture conservation, more nutrient cycling, and less erosion. But conservation tillage is less effective than conventional tillage on poorly drained soils where large amount of crop residues are available, causing problems of weed diseases and pest control, where less residues are available to cover the soil, where the lands are eroded or degraded, and where the soil structure is poor. So, relies on chemical control and planting of cover crops to control erosion and leaching by utilizing soil nitrates uh, are promising strategies when we use a stubble mulch or conservation tillage approach. One of the most successful strategies of farming on our slopy dry lands, be it the mountainous tract of Pothwar Plateau or the undulating sandy fields of Thar regions, is the contour farming or contour plowing. Contours are the lines of uniform elevation on a slopy land. In contour plowing, instead of cultivating crops down the slope, the crops are cultivated along the contour lines, that is across the slope. So this is growing crops around the hill. In this way, the rows of crops intercept the rainfall water at each row, significantly reducing the velocity of water, thus controlling runoff and erosion. So take home message from this video lecture is that tillage is a necessary evil. Tillage has both beneficial and detrimental effects, and we need rational tillage practices. As we rotate crops, the rotation of tillage implements is also as much necessary as is rotation of crop. And conservation tillage is the best strategy in dryland farming. Stubble mulch is more effective in regions and seasons of low rainfall. The success, dissemination, and adoption of stubble mulch will depend on the availability and affordability of specialized tillage and planting equipment. For example, sweep cultivators, paraplows, rod weeders, and specialized planting equipment.